Midnight over a quiet Texas cornfield. Through the blurry green glow of a night vision monitor, you see them. Over 20 shadowy beasts tearing into the earth, snapping roots with brutal force. Inside his pickup, Miller Hayes, a 63-year-old third-generation farmer, watches the screen and sighs. It takes mere hours for a feral herd to destroy what took his family 3 generations to build. This is not just lost corn. It is a direct insult to the sweat and blood of American hard work. Across the nation, these living bulldozers rack up $2.5 billion in damage every single year. Weighing up to 400 pounds with necks built like steel rams, they slice through rich American soil like biological excavators. This is an all-out war for the heartland, and the land is losing. Subscribe to the channel now so you never miss an episode of our deep dive into America's untold battles. To understand how our land got this deep scar, we have to turn back the clock 500 years. To make sense of the chaos tearing up American farmland today, you have to realize one painful truth. The wild boar was never meant to be here. This sprawling nightmare did not begin with an act of nature, but with the wooden hulls of European ships carrying a seemingly innocent livestock solution across the Atlantic. The story starts in 1493, when Christopher Columbus set sail on his second voyage to the New World. Packed alongside soldiers, seeds, and supplies were 8 domestic pigs. To the Spanish explorers, swine were the ultimate survival asset. They were tough, ate practically anything, and could be turned loose on tropical islands to reproduce freely, creating a living pantry for future expeditions. It was a brilliant logistic strategy for 16th-century maritime empires, but it planted the very first seeds of an ecological disaster. 46 years later, in 1539, another Spanish conquistador named Hernando de Soto landed on the shores of Florida. He brought 13 pigs with him to feed his marching army as they pushed deep into the southeastern wilderness. As De Soto marched through dense swamps and pine forests, some of those pigs naturally strayed from the herd, while others escaped during brutal clashes with Native American tribes. Untamed, resilient, and master adapters, these farm animals did not perish. They thrived in the rich American wilderness, breeding at an astonishing pace and establishing the first truly wild populations across the South. For nearly 4 centuries, these feral hogs remained a localized nuisance, mostly confined to southern woods and river bottoms. Natively domestic, they were destructive, but their numbers were somewhat manageable. Then came the late 19th century, and with it, a fateful choice made by wealthy American elites. In the 1890s, wealthy industrial tycoons built massive, fenced hunting preserves in places like North Carolina and Texas. To create the ultimate sporting experience, they imported purebred Eurasian wild boars directly from the dense forests of Russia and Eastern Europe. These Russian boars were entirely different beasts. They possessed thick, bristly coats, long razor-sharp tusks, elongated snouts built for deep digging, and an aggressive temper matched only by their raw physical strength. Inevitably, fences broke, storms downed timber, and the imported Russian boars escaped into the woods. That was the moment 2 distinct worlds collided. The escaped Eurasian wild boars met the feral domestic pigs that had been roaming American soil since the days of Spanish conquistadors. What followed was a genetic explosion, an unintended crossbreeding event that gave birth to what scientists and wildlife managers now call the super swine. Nature rarely constructs a creature so perfectly engineered for total dominance. The hybrid offspring inherited the absolute best survival traits from both sides of their bloodline. From their Russian wild boar ancestors, they gained sheer aggression, thick protective hide over their shoulders, razor-like tusks, and an incredible tolerance for brutal winters and extreme heat. From their domestic pig ancestors, They inherited an unthinkable reproductive capability, reaching sexual maturity in mere months and producing large litters multiple times a year. It was the ultimate biological storm. Humans had accidentally created a high-protein, hyper-intelligent, unstoppable breeding machine equipped with the wild survival instincts of a predator and the reproductive power of farm livestock. They were no longer just farm pigs playing wild in the mud, nor were they timid game animals staying inside private hunting preserves. They became an apex invasive threat, expanding silently along river basins, pushing into timberlands, and marching straight toward the heartland of American agriculture. Decade after decade, these hybrid herds drifted across county lines and state borders without raising major red flags. They moved under the cover of dense forest canopies and dark nights, eating everything from crops and acorn crops to ground-nesting birds and small livestock. By the time landowners realized what was happening on their back 40, the momentum was already far beyond control. Which brings us to the core mystery that leaves researchers and farmers baffled to this day. But how exactly did a few dozen runaway pigs from historic ships and private hunting grounds transform into an invincible invading army capable of taking over an entire continent? To answer that question, you have to look at the raw biology of this animal. What we are dealing with today is not just an ordinary pest. It is a biological survival machine, built with terrifying efficiency to dominate any environment it touches. When wildlife biologists map out the spread of wild hogs over the past few decades, the data looks like a red stain spreading across a map of the United States. They started tucked away in just 3 or 4 southern states, but today, these animals have expanded their territory into at least 35 states, carving a path from the swamps of Florida all the way to the Canadian border. The secret behind this explosion comes down to one simple factor: reproductive firepower. Feral hogs are the most prolific large wild mammal on the North American continent. A young female, known as a sow, can begin breeding when she is just 6 to 8 months old. She carries her litter for roughly 114 days, gives birth, and can be ready to breed again almost immediately. That means a single sow can produce 2 litters every year, dropping anywhere from 4 to 12 piglets each time. Do the math on that generational growth, and it becomes truly terrifying. A single female and her offspring can produce hundreds of hogs in just a few short years. Piglets reach maturity in the blink of an eye, and the cycle repeats, compounding exponentially like compound interest on a credit card debt that America cannot pay off. But raw numbers are only half the battle. What makes these creatures a true nightmare for landowners is their startling intelligence and tight bimodal social structure. Wild hogs live in matriarchal family groups called sounders, usually led by a few older, experienced sows and their young. These sounders operate with a collective mind. They communicate, protect one another, and most importantly, they learn at a shocking speed. If a farmer sets a basic cage trap and catches 3 piglets while the matriarch watches from the woodline, that sow will remember the steel structure, the scent of the bait, and the sound of the falling gate for the rest of her life. She will actively lead her sounder away from iron cages, teach her young to avoid human scents, and switch her entire group to a nocturnal lifestyle. Within days, an entire sounder can become completely invisible, moving only under the pitch-black cover of night, avoiding roads, and bypassing traditional traps with eerie precision. Trappers often say that catching a wild hog is easy, but catching an educated wild hog is nearly impossible. Then you have to consider their physical toughness. These animals are built like armored tanks. They can sprint through dense brush at speeds pushing 25 miles per hour, swim across wide rivers without breaking a sweat, and jump over fences that would stop normal livestock. Mature boars develop a thick layer of dense, gristly cartilage over their shoulders, known as a shield. This protective plate acts like body armor, designed by nature to protect them during brutal fights with rival males, and it can easily deflect small-caliber bullets or dull the impact of hunting dogs. Their snouts are equipped with rock-hard cartilage backed by powerful neck muscles, turning their heads into biological shovels capable of turning over hard-packed soil, asphalt edges, and concrete foundations in search of food. This brings us to a mind-boggling mathematical reality that keeps wildlife managers up at night. Biologists have run the population models over and over again, and the conclusion is always the same. In order to simply keep the wild hog population stable, to stop the total numbers from growing year after year, wildlife control teams must eliminate at least 66 to 70% of the total hog population every single year. Read that again. You cannot just hunt a few dozen hogs on the weekend and think you made a dent. If you do not remove 7 out of every 10 hogs across the entire country every 12 months, their numbers will still go up. That 70% threshold is a mathematical wall that traditional hunting, trapping, and land management simply cannot breach. It is a statistical hurdle that feels almost impossible to overcome. This is no longer just a set of alarming numbers printed on a government report from the Department of Agriculture. This is a living, breathing crisis playing out on every single inch of American soil. When you fly a drone high over the fertile fields of the American heartland, the damage becomes painfully clear. Beautiful rows of vibrant green corn and peanuts, planted with laser precision, are suddenly broken up by massive, jagged craters of bare dirt. From above, it looks like a carpet bombing run tore through the property overnight, but on the ground, that devastation carries a human voice and a heavy heart. Take a walk with Adam McClendon, a hard-working farmer down in Georgia. Look at his hands, calloused, dirt-stained, and worn down by decades of working the land. When you look into his eyes, you see a quiet determination mixed with deep, bone-deep exhaustion. Adam is not facing a bad weather season or a sudden drop in market prices. He is fighting a relentless war on his own soil. Over the past 15 years, feral hogs have cost his family operation more than $100,000 every single year. Think about that figure for a moment. That is $1.5 million pulled directly out of a family business, wiped out by invasive herds, destroying seeds, snapping drip irrigation lines, and trampling mature crops just days before harvest. Have you ever worked tirelessly on a project for months, only to see it ruined overnight? If you have ever experienced something like that, let us know in the comments below. Yet the financial pain, as devastating as it is, only scratches the surface. The environmental wreckage left in their wake is an ecological disaster that scars the land for generations. As these animals push their tough snouts into the soil to root for underground tubers and invertebrates, they strip away the delicate topsoil that took nature centuries to build. This constant churn triggers massive erosion, washing precious nutrients into local creeks and turning clear waterways into murky, silt-choked streams. Native wildlife simply stands no chance against this relentless invasion. Feral hogs act like vacuum cleaners across the forest floor, devouring acorns and native vegetation that feed white-tailed deer and wild turkeys. They dig up the delicate nests of sea turtles along the coast, destroy the burrows of rare gopher tortoises, and vacuum up the eggs of ground-nesting birds like quail. Nothing is spared. Even worse, these animals carry a hidden biological threat that directly impacts human life. Back in 2006, a deadly E. coli outbreak traced back to fresh spinach grown in California shook the nation. 3 people lost their lives, and over 200 individuals were hospitalized with severe kidney failure. When health investigators tracked down the source, they did not find a processing plant error. They found wild hogs that had wandered into the crop fields, carrying lethal strains of bacteria in their waste and contaminating the food supply. It was a terrifying wake-up call, proving that wild hogs are not just a farm issue, but a public health crisis, threatening the dinner tables of everyday American families. What hurts the most, though, is the quiet, emotional toll this takes on farm families across the country. To an American farmer, land is not just real estate or a balance sheet item. It is a living legacy, a sacred trust passed down from grandfathers to fathers, and from fathers to children. It represents generations of backbreaking labor, early mornings, late nights, and sacrifices made to build something lasting. Watching a sounder of wild hogs tear through a pristine field in a single night feels like a personal assault on that family heritage. It hurts like losing a piece of yourself, watching the soil your family nursed back to health get ripped apart by an invasive force that seems unstoppable. Farmers across America are standing their ground, working from dawn till dusk to protect their property, but many feel completely isolated in this fight. Which leads us to a crucial question that every rural community is asking right now. Are rifles, night optics, and sheer willpower going to be enough to stop a million-strong army, or do we need an entirely new way to fight back? For decades, the standard response to this invading army was brute force. Farmers grabbed high-powered rifles, outfitted trucks with thermal optics, and hired private helicopters to streak low across southern pastures, picking off animals from the air. It looked impressive on video, but in reality, it was a costly drop in the bucket. Helicopter hunts cost thousands of dollars an hour, and sporadic shooting actually backfires. When you shoot 2 or 3 hogs out of a 15-member sounder, you do not solve the problem. You scatter the survivors. The remaining hogs scatter across county lines, learn to fear human noise, and split into smaller, hyper-cautious groups that multiply in secret. Brute force was simply educating the enemy and spreading the threat wider. To win a war against a creature this smart, land managers had to stop thinking like hunters and start thinking like military strategists. That realization birthed a whole new era of high-tech defense, led by researchers at the Department of Agriculture and innovative agricultural tech developers. The game changer came in the form of smart traps. Unlike old-fashioned drop boxes, a modern smart trap relies on artificial intelligence, live streaming cellular cameras, and heavy-duty circular netting or gates. A trapper can set up a circular corral deep in the woods, stock it with corn, and monitor the site directly from a smartphone app miles away. The trap stays open for days, letting the hogs enter and leave freely until the entire sounder grows comfortable. The trapper watches the live feed night after night, waiting patiently until every single pig, from the dominant matriarch down to the smallest piglet, is safely inside the ring. With a single tap on a screen from the comfort of a living room, the gate drops instantly. This whole sounder removal strategy changes everything. By capturing the entire family unit at once, you eliminate the risk of leaving behind educated survivors that can teach future generations how to avoid traps. It turns an endless cat-and-mouse game into a precise, highly effective operation. Yet catching these animals is only half of the modern equation. The other half involves turning a national nightmare into a sustainable economic opportunity. Enter the wild boar meat industry, a sector that has grown into a $100 million market. Instead of letting trapped feral hogs go to waste, specialized operators load humanely captured animals into certified transport vehicles bound for USDA-inspected processing facilities. Because wild hogs can carry diseases like brucellosis, the inspection process is extraordinarily strict. USDA veterinarians examine every animal before and after processing to guarantee absolute safety for human consumption. Once certified, wild boar meat transforms into a sought-after delicacy featured on the menus of upscale restaurants from New York to Los Angeles. Culinary experts praise its rich, nutty flavor, shaped by a natural diet of acorns, roots, and wild pecans. From a nutritional standpoint, wild boar leaves domestic pork in the dust. Because these animals spend their lives constantly moving and foraging across rugged terrain, their meat is remarkably lean, containing roughly 3% fat compared to the 14% or higher found in commercial factory-farmed pork. It is packed with lean protein, iron, and healthy omega-3 fatty acids, making it a favorite for health-conscious consumers looking for truly wild, free-range meat. Trapping entire sounders with smart technology and channeling them into a regulated commercial market has given American landowners a powerful double-edged sword. It reduces field damage while generating real economic value out of an invasive crisis. Which brings us to the ultimate question facing researchers and environmental stewards today. Is turning an invasive crisis into a profitable industry truly the silver bullet that will wipe out this 500-year scar? Or does commercialization create new incentives that could keep the wild hog around forever? Sunrise breaks over Miller Hayes' Texas cornfield, painting the soil golden. Thanks to smart traps, his crop damage dropped from 25% to under 5%. Hope is back. This battle was never just about fighting an invasive animal, but fixing past human mistakes to restore balance to the land. As Miller runs rich black dirt through his calloused fingers, watching his grandson drive the tractor, the lesson is clear. The wild boar is a part of our history, a product of our past choices. But the land belongs to our future. What are your thoughts on protecting our agricultural heritage? Let us know in the comments below, hit that subscribe button to support the channel, and we will see you all in the next video.